Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin by saying thank you to the entire Yang family for giving me the honor of speaking today. Since my arrival yesterday, I am in complete awe at how beautiful this weekend services are. I'm glad to be a part of them. As we know, Brian lived a blessed life, and it's only fitting that we send him off accordingly. I'd like to introduce myself first. My name is Thomas Bluestone. I am a captain in the United States Army, and I currently serve as the commander of the 513th Transportation Company. I had the pleasure of being Brian's commander for the last year of his service. We arrived at the 513th Transportation Company together after the unit redeployed from Kuwait in July 2020. Brian was there for my first day of command, and I was there for his last day of service. The first time I met Brian was an afternoon late in July. He was finishing his time with his previous unit, the 564th Field Feeding Company. He wanted to stop by and introduce himself and get a feeling for what he was about to transition into. I was in my conference room with my other lieutenants. We were reviewing our inventory documents, and it was turning into a rather late night. He walked in with the intent just to introduce himself, and he just wanted to say he wanted to report in. I said, great, have a seat, let's get to work. He kind of paused, and there was a little awkward silence for a second. He said, sir, I have some appointments with my current commander, I do got to leave. And I said, that's fine, I was just kidding. But we did talk for a little bit, we exchanged our contact information, and I sent him back to his commander. About an hour goes by, and for context, we're rounding about 5:30 or 6 p.m. Usually by that time, I like to have the soldiers home. It's the end of our duty day. Surprisingly, around that time, Brian walks back in my conference room, and he said, I came back to help with the inventory. This was very significant to me and my team, because he willingly came back to help his future comrades work a late night. And even though he still worked for someone else, he showed up. It was a great example of one of our 7 Army values of selfless service. A basic building block of selfless service is the commitment of each team member to go a little further, endure a little longer, and take a look a little closer to see how he or she can add to the effort. Brian uplifted our morale that night, and it helped us get home earlier than we expected. It was a great first impression for the entire team. For those who served or are currently serving, we know that the military asks a lot of an individual, and we often have more difficult days than easy ones. But the most memorable times in my career are centered around comrades or battle buddies who maintained a positive outlook and professionalism as we work to accomplish our required missions. Today, I'd like to highlight some of my fondest memories serving alongside Brian this past year. I will spend my time allocated today with highlights of his contributions to our unit's success. Prior to Brian's arrival to the transportation company, he was already serving as a platoon leader for a very complex unit. They were responsible for the entire installation's field feeding. They ran the dining facilities on Joint Base Lewis-McChord and concurrently tasked with providing field feeding in the units in the training areas. From my conversations with his commander there, she had many positive things to say about him. She highlighted that he was extremely smart, self-driven, and had unlimited potential within the military. So getting to my first fond memory, and I'll never forget this one for as long as I walk. The first fond memory I have of Brian was him doing my job. I was stuck in a conference call. At the end of each of our training events, the military does what we call an after-action review, where we highlight what we did well, what we could work on for the next training event. And we had just completed a new initiative back at JBLM of Readiness Day. It's a monthly event dedicated. We have our sergeants talk to the soldiers about timely social issues, among other topics identified by the senior commander at the installation. The first iteration centered around racial tensions stemming from recent policing issues. It provided us a lot of insightful feedback, hearing about the soldiers and how themselves, their families, and friends were affected. But as we were wrapping up the day's activities, the only thing holding back the soldiers from going home was the commander's after-action review. I remind you, I am the commander. So, to add on to the significance of me being there, each event in the Army is usually a condition setter for something else. So this after-action review is providing me feedback that I can brief my commander, who briefs his commander. So there I was, sitting in my office, and I look outside and I see my company formed up. I squint my eyes out the window, and I see Brian Yang in my position as the commander, holding a formation. Kind of took a little shock there for a second. I just threw the phone down and I started going outside. I get to the formation and they're in the middle of the after action review. I kind of calmly walked up to Brian by his side. What's going on? He just looked at me and smiled and said, sir, we're doing the AAR, the after action review. Yeah, I said, interesting. I said, what did our timeline say was supposed to happen today? Sir, 1600, we're supposed to do the commander's AAR. Brian, that's very interesting. It is 1600, but how can we do the commander's AAR without the commander? And those who know Brian, he always had a great answer for everything. He said, and I quote, he was exercising disciplined initiative. As leaders in the Army, we preach this to our subordinates every day. It's taking action in the absence of orders. So when he flipped the script on me, I just laughed on the inside, tried to keep a straight face. I said, I got it from here, LT. Move on. First memory. The next fond memory was a time when Brian and the other lieutenants tried to break into my house. It was an interesting attempt to surprise me on my birthday. On most nights, it would have gone smoothly, but that day was very particular for me and my unit. We had just finished with administrating punitive actions to multiple soldiers. Punitive action is a result of a soldier committing misconduct, and in order for me to uphold good order and discipline and avoid removing soldiers from service, we give them punitive action. Very rough. We had 3 soldiers disrespect a senior non-commissioned officer in my formation. And when it was all said and done, I had to demote 3 soldiers that evening. They left very angry, and they made no qualms about hiding it. They left angry. So I wrapped up all the paperwork. It's about 7 p.m., and I'm going home to eat with my family. I get home, I sit down, and all of a sudden, I just start hearing pounding on my door. A million things rush through my mind, and all of a sudden, I'm thinking, okay, so my family to go kind of get behind the door. I'm bracing myself for a conflict with some angry soldiers, possibly. And then I go look through my eye hole, and it's blocked. But the pounding's still coming harder now, and I'm like, oh, great, here we go. I open the door really quick to see if I can get a jump on whoever's going to come through. And I see Brian Yang just smiling, holding the birthday cake. My birthday was later that weekend. And I looked at him and I wanted to cuss him out. But I looked back at my wife saying, invite him in, let's have cake. So we did celebrate that night, and we had some cake and ice cream and laughed about the whole event. Again, those who know Brian, you understand how self-driven he is. This is probably one of his greatest characteristics, but it also kept us very busy. I always had to make sure Brian didn't sign us up for anything that we weren't already tasked to do. He often found himself in our higher headquarters talking to the operations section. After about the 3rd Battalion weapons range we ran, with him as the officer in charge, I had to intervene. I said, Brian, we can't do this anymore. It became really an inside joke at our weekly company training meeting. I would brief 8 weeks of training out, and then when I was finished, I would look at Brian and say, Brian, is there anything else that you've added to the calendar? He always would just smile and shake his head no. I said, all right, we're learning. Brian was a great steward of the profession. He always intrigued me, or he was always intrigued with the political side of officership. There's so many unwritten rules that come along with our positions. One evening in November, he was asking me more about some unwritten rules, and I was having trouble of finding my notebook with him. I know it's kind of contradictory to have unwritten rules written down. Just don't tell my boss. So I couldn't think of one off the top of my head, and I looked at my wall in my office, and I had my family's Christmas card. And I said, okay. I told Brian that all Army officers are expected to give the battalion command team a holiday card on Christmas. He kind of looked shocked. He said he's never heard anything of the sort. I said, it's because it's an unwritten rule. Very unbecoming of an officer not to present his commander a Christmas card with a picture. So those of you who know Brian, he didn't have a wife or kids, so he had to take a picture by himself. Reluctantly, he and the other lieutenants, they all made their cards for the holiday pictures. I came into the work and I was so excited. I cannot explain how excited I was for it to go down. We went to the command team, the battalion staff, and they were all extremely surprised, more confused as to why I was bringing my lieutenants to give them Christmas cards with pictures of themselves. It was a little awkward to say the least. But by far my favorite prank I've ever pulled on my team. After delivering the cards, we went back to the office. We had some off-the-record holiday toasts. Again, unwritten rules. But the lieutenants kept asking why everyone seemed so shocked. I said, it's because they don't have a good mentor like me. And I said, I'm teaching you guys customs and courtesies. But as I look back at that night, I did think we did learn a valuable lesson. I taught us all that we need to sometimes go out of our comfort zones and be graceful about it. So, as I can neither confirm nor deny that there is a written rule to deliver holiday cards, it will remain something that I do for the rest of my time in the service. As a steward of the profession myself, I'm charged with training lieutenants to take my job. It's important. We are not like other occupations where we wait and hold our position. We are charged to train our replacements. And I take that extremely, extremely serious. And I have no doubt that Brian was inching closer and closer every single day to being ready for that challenge. Officially, Brian's position was the platoon leader of 2nd Platoon. They had a platoon named Wolfpack. The Wolfpack name has been synonymous with this platoon for multiple decades, and it bonds soldiers to even closer knit groups than the company relationships. 2nd Platoon, his platoon, was comprised of 60 soldiers, tasked to provide line haul transportation support to America's 1st Corps and affiliated teammates in the Pacific Northwest region. Brian and his team never failed to provide world-class support, and were often asked to support battalion-level operations. But Brian's biggest achievement and accomplishment was not even his own. To me, Brian's biggest accomplishment was the success of his 3 squads that made up his platoon. The platoon, or his platoon, prepared for the squad evaluation exercise in June to assess their ability to conduct tactical convoy operations. I evaluated each squad on their ability to react to direct contact, indirect contact, unexploded ordnances, tactical combat casualty care, maintenance recovery operations, and communicating. When we completed all these squad evaluations, all 3 of Brian's squads took 1st, 2nd, and 3rd out of all the squads that competed. That was a clear indication that Brian and his team were extremely proficient. He trained the soldiers to the Army standard, not my standard, the Army standard. And in my eyes, that was his biggest achievement during my command. His ability to make the others around him rise to the occasion when it mattered is a feat that I was grateful to witness. And due to his many successes at the company, Brian was then hand-selected to assume the executive officer position at the 24th Composite Supply Company. That is the 2nd largest company on our entire installation. Their mission is very complex as they provide water, fuel, shower, laundry capabilities, and supply acquisition functions to the entire installation. When our battalion commander needed someone to assist their commander with the mission, he immediately told me that Brian was the guy for the job, and I agreed. Brian's officer evaluation report was completed earlier this year as well. I would like to share the words that he received for his final year of service. And I quote, "Brian's propensity to take initiative enables him to succeed where others could not. He is selected to take the challenge as a company executive officer. Continue to prepare this promising leader for company command. Promote to captain and send the logistics captain's career course ahead of his peers." Dated 13 July. It was my greatest military honor to escort Brian from Joint Base Lewis-McChord back to the family earlier this month. It was the hardest and most rewarding task in my entire 15 years of service to the nation. And as Brian's commander, I would have had it no other way. I bring my soldiers home. I thank you guys for letting me do that. I would like to conclude my time today by presenting the family with a small token of our appreciation for Brian. As your rich and beautiful culture has farewell rituals and proceedings, our Army culture is similar with our ceremony and honors. And another unwritten custom that I work hard to ensure lives on is that officers in my unit receive a Pioneer rifle upon completion of their service. It is with a heavy heart I present Brian's final token from the Roadrunners of 513th Transportation Company. The rifle will be presented by two of his own sergeants, Staff Sergeant Aspen and Sergeant Thomas.
Right. Feet. Center. Face. Center. Face. This is where 513 Company is. It is honor. Left. Face. Forward. March.
As believed in my Native American culture, all living things reincarnate as part of the circle of life. I truly believe Brian will reemerge where he is most needed. And in my cultural language, we do not have words for goodbye. We only have words that translate to, I will see you later. So I will leave with these words. Odani Owa gods, Brian Yang.